It would look so cool if it was all of that, but it is mostly none of that. Hello and welcome or welcome back to Tinker Swim. My name is Jennifer. I'm a knitter and crocheter from Southern California, where I live with my husband and our 2 cats. This is the final and probably longest video in a series I'm doing covering my 2025 year in review. If you missed the first 2 videos, I'll link them in the description below. In this video, we're going to finish off with September through November 2025 of all of my finished projects. I'll also be summarizing some general statistics, and I'll be handing out some completely made up prizes to my projects to celebrate the trials and triumphs, all the lessons learned, and get a good giggle out of everything that I finished or flubbed on this year. And finally, I'll be reflecting on this year and the major lessons that I'm taking away and hoping to carry with me into 2026 and beyond. As always, I'll link all of the Ravelry projects in the description below in case you want to know more about the patterns or the yarn that I use. If I miss anything or if you have any questions at all, please feel free to leave a comment. All right, with all of the introductory stuff out of the way, I hope you are comfy. I hope you're ready. I hope you have a warm beverage if that is available and suitable for you. We're in for a long one. And let's kick this off with September 2025, where I finished 2 projects, the first of which is the Clawsome Lobster socks designed by Charlotte Stone of Stone Knits. This is the second of 3 patterns bundled up in the Fisher Folks Fancy set, the first of which was packed like sardines. For the Clawsome Lobster socks, I used Guild of St. Cuthbert yarn. For those who are unaware, this is like my one and only neutral yarn that I own for the majority of this year, and I basically put it in everything where I needed some sort of neutral, beigey, light yarn. It's an undyed base, superwash merino, cashmere, and nylon. I used a total of 50 grams as the main color or backdrop of the lobsters. For the lobsters themselves, I used Cascade Yarns cotton socks in the colorway number 4 cherry, which you'll actually see a little bit, or actually a bunch, left over on the shelf up here. I used a total of 15 grams for those little dudes, and I used some scrap yarn for the eyes. This was a gift for my husband after a summer of making accessories and socks for friends and family members. It dawned on me that I have never knit anything for my husband. I did crochet him a hat a couple years back, but I went ahead and asked him to pick a pattern, or I was on a sock kick, so I asked him to choose some socks and I would make him a pair. We decided on the lobster socks. And it was a really good giggle throughout because every single time the lobsters would emerge or I finished like the claws or something, we would both just kind of chant lobsters, lobsters. Um, I would say these socks are up in difficulty from the sardine socks, and I really appreciate how she appeared to. I don't know if it was intentional or not. I'm gonna assume it was. The patterns in the set, the Fisher Folks Fancy set, seem to be arranged in order of difficulty. So easiest first and most complicated last, because the third pattern is like snappy, happy, or happy, snappy crab socks. And I'm pretty sure those have 4 colors total, whereas the lobster socks have 3 colors. And you have the option to do duplicate stitching instead of doing 3 stranded color work when it comes to the eyes. For some reason, I was less intimidated by the idea of 3 stranded color work versus duplicate stitching, so I went ahead and tried that. It definitely affected the tension a little bit, so there are parts of the sock, especially when they were new, where my husband was kind of struggling to get his foot in. As long as like he got it past these like tighter tension areas with the eyes, then it was okay. I think by now though, he's actually worn them so much. He does love them a lot, and my husband isn't. My husband cannot fake sincerity. If he doesn't like something, it doesn't exist in his brain. Basically, like I got him these hats that I thought like were his style, his preferred style, because he has a really old hat that he would continuously wear to death. And I was like, oh, maybe he could use some new hats of that roughly same style. But he didn't find them as comfortable. So literally gathering dust. So I know that he loves these socks because he wears them all the time. The second thing that I finished in September is a garment for myself, and that is Manis, designed by Bernice, also known as Yamagara. I started it in August and finished it About a month later, the yarn I used was leftover from another set of sentimental yarn that I purchased on my honeymoon. The yarn is Yarn Floozy Sage, which is a fingering weight merino and silk blend, I believe. The colorway is Calla Lily, which is on the bottom portion of this top. And the main part of the top is done in Yarn Floozy Mohair in the colorway Galaxy. I used 25 grams of both yarns, and this top is done bottom up. It starts off with a chevron lace done entirely in the fingering weight. Then you start to stripe with the mohair, and then eventually you do all mohair. And as you go up towards the arm portions and the upper body, you continuously increase at a certain interval the needle size. As you finish the garment, the faster it goes. Like it's over before you know it is kind of the feeling. There were moments where it felt kind of like a drudge because mohair held single tends to be very hard on the hands for me. I made a size 2, but I think I should have gone up to a size 3, honestly. The garment is meant to be worn with a lot of positive ease, and I don't think I respected that suggestion or requirement enough. So the mohair is like right up against my arm, and I do have broad shoulders and a larger circumference around the arm. And that's something I definitely, there are schematics in the pattern and the measurements are given there. So that's just all on me for not having measured to ensure that that was going to be a comfortable fit. Mohair is like pretty inelastic, and the way that the bind off is, it's a pearl edging around the armhole as opposed to like something with ribbing. So it's a pretty stiff armhole edging. There's no flexibility there. Having said that, I have worn it a few times. I do think it is pretty comfortable overall once I can get it over my head. Some new to me skills that I picked up through this pattern include Russian grafting, which is a way to connect two pieces of knitting as opposed to something like Kitchener. It involves a crochet hook and it creates this nice decorative um, edging on the top of the shoulders. And that was a lot of fun for me. I was also new to that type of armhole edging, so the pearls as opposed to ribbing. All right, we're moving into October, which is when I finally allowed myself to be bitten by the seasonal making bug. In previous years, it was kind of like, I don't know if you've seen like the sad Kermit meme looking out the window and the rain is falling outside and it's dramatic. But that's always kind of how I felt of like, oh, I want to make something Halloweeny and I just don't have the time or the space on my needles or hooks. But hey, this is a hobby. We can do what we want. And so I went a little crazy with it. In October, I finished 3 total makes, the first of which is not a Halloween make, but it was something I was already working on from September. That would be the Springbound Mitts designed by Erica Husser. I made these, and this is one of the last times that you'll see it. The Guild of St. Cuthbert, that yarn really got some mileage through this year. I also used some leftover yarn from a dyer who's no longer dyeing, I believe. They were known as Oak and Fiber. I think she might still sell her dye recipes, but I know she doesn't sell yarn anymore. It was from like a writer themed dark academia type of colorway set. I didn't have any black yarn or dark yarn to go with this aesthetic because I really like the look of the original Springbound Mitts and I wanted to kind of emulate that. But those were the closest, that was the closest colorway that I had to like kind of like a dark shade of gray or brown. Finally, I used leftover the ginger needle Fermi colorway as the accent color along the wrist. My totals were 32 grams for the main color, the Guild of St. Cuthbert, 24 grams of the contrast color, and 6 grams of the accent color. Some skills that I learned when making this include a thumb gusset, an Italian sewn bind off, or what the pattern says invisible bind off or 1x1 ribbing. So I'm not actually sure if it really is the Italian sewn bind off because when looking for that phrase, and she also links a video for a demonstration. I went looking for more videos just to get additional, because I think people can agree, like it really depends on what kind of video you're watching. Sometimes certain people explain things different ways that make sense for you. So I've seen Italian sewn bind off, so I'm not sure. I learned a new bind off is the conclusion there. It's basically Kitchener, but it makes a really nice clean edging. And I found that really fun. A self-inflicted new skill that I learned is the ladder back jacquard. So since this is a physically small project, I decided to go ahead and use it as my test dummy for learning the method of ladder back jacquard, which is a way for you to carry unused yarn in color work through the back by essentially creating a second layer of knit fabric on the opposite side. And if you're familiar with the regular color work carrying yarn, you're not doing any twisting of the yarn. You are literally purling with that yarn, and then eventually you decrease at a certain point, and then that whole column of purl, or on the flip side, knit stitches, eventually disappears into the back of the fabric. The end result is quite a bit of puckering on the left mitt because that's the first one I was making. Although I think I got it pretty smoothed out for the right mitt. And that's all okay with me. It's not like this was a gift or anything. And I'm very forgiving to myself if I'm making something that only I'm going to use. And at the end of the day, I'm still really proud of the overall results of these mitts because they're beautiful. It felt like painting with yarn, basically. And on top of that, they are very cozy, and I do like wearing them. The second item that I finished is the Haunted Night Skies socks from the Bewitched sock set designed by Charlotte Stone of Stone Knits. Once I did my first Charlotte Stone pattern, I really took off with it. This is around the time that I finally created knitting social media to be a more active member of the online knitting community. So I saw Charlotte Stone release this pattern basically in real time, and I saw the cute little ghosts basically dancing, and yeah, I knew I had to cast it on. I used a combination of scrap yarn for the leg portion, the leg colorwork portion, but the main color, the majority of the sock is done in Loop and Whirl Fiber Co. Psycho Sock, which is a BFL or Blueface Lobster. And the colorway is Tornado Watch. I used a total of 30 grams. The colorwork portion is done in a combination of Yarn Floozy, Sage, and Calla Lily, so leftover yarn there. And the ghosts are actually two different yarns. So in one sock, it's the last of the Guild of St. Cuthbert, and the other sock is leftover bamboo pop sock solids in the colorway foam. The pattern itself is really fun and engaging. I got a huge kick out of it. I always wanted a Halloween type pair of socks, and I finally have them. The downside is, of course, something that I foresaw and went ahead with it anyway because it wasn't that serious at the end of the day. And what I'm talking about is the overall fit of the sock and understanding a little bit more about the fabric that each yarn creates. I was aware that the leg of the socks would be a little bit loose. And that's because silk tends to not have as much memory. Like if we're comparing everything to merino wool, silk tends to not have as much memory. Bamboo doesn't have as much memory, or bamboo grows over time. Cotton grows over time. And in fact, I think cashmere might also grow over time. So all of that blended together in the leg of a sock creates kind of a non-grippy leg. What surprised me was the BFL. What I wasn't expecting was that BFL would also be pretty, I guess, loose in terms of if I were to compare it to a merino, unless my tension just went all over the place. But basically, at the end of the day, the socks are pretty loose. But that doesn't stop me from wearing it. I have worn it a lot, spooky season or not. I don't care. They are comfortable. They're just not super form fitting. The last thing that I finished in October 2025 was a little bit of a race to the finish line because while I allowed myself to get into the spirit of the holidays, I wasn't necessarily gauging my time or understanding how quickly I can or cannot get things done. So most of my focus for the month of October was this Nocturnal Jumper designed by Wei Chen of Saskia & Co. I made it in Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino in the 3 colorways: linen for 160 grams, rust for 75 grams, and coal, COAL, for 45 grams. I knit a size 3. I think I might have been able to get away with a size 2, but however, there's quite a bit of positive ease that's intended for this garment, so it actually probably fits like it's supposed to, with the exception of all the modifications, which include I did a tubular cast on. I don't know if that actually counts as a modification. I don't think she specifies a type of cast on. I did add German short rows for neck shaping, which caused a bit of drama. I split the hem and I shortened the sleeves. And finally, I did no corrugated ribbing. At this point, I started doing a knitting podcast, so I don't want to talk too much about the same details in case that's kind of old news at this point. I was surprised at how light it was, given that there are places where it's a 3-stranded color work piece in worsted weight. So I have worn it quite a few times. I've worn it out, I've worn it to different gatherings, and I actually didn't get a chance to share this when I was going over it as a fresh finished object because I completely forgot. I was too excited. But I wore it to my local yarn store and it was actually really sweet. So I'm a bit of an introvert. I have been working on this over the years to accept compliments and try to do it as gracefully as possible. Even though the sensation is to immediately shrink back into the wall like the Homer Simpson GIF or GIF. So I walked into my local yarn store and the owners were like, "Oh, I love your sweater. Did you make that?" And I got to do that, that exchange of, "Yes, I did make it." Oh, and then everybody, there was actually a crochet class happening at that time, and it was a table full. There were like 10 people there making these beautiful crochet, I think, pot holders. It ended up kind of being a whole like fashion show moment of like, "Oh my god, turn like spin for us," and they were joking and like, now you have to walk the runway. Anyway, so that kind of made my day because it's just nice to have that recognition from fellow crafters of like something that you're so proud of, right? I'm sure people can relate to that. Um, but yeah, so that was a fun experience that I had when it was pretty fresh off the needles, maybe like a week after I finished that. And finally, we are moving into November 2025 with a total of 4 finished objects. So my first finished project in November is the bane of my existence. I've mentioned all of my disdain and love for it many a time. This is the LYS, designed by Andrea Mowry, also known as Drea Renee Knits. I cast on this cardigan for my best friend as a surprise birthday present. Her birthday is in March, and I cast it on in February 2024, and I did not finish it until November 2025. So it is an almost 2-year late birthday present for her. After I realized I wasn't going to finish it in time, considering it was the first cardigan that I was ever making, and a whole garment, giving myself probably a couple of weeks only to get it to her birthday that year. Yeah, things quickly went south, and I did tell her that I was working on a birthday present for her, and she was delighted. And she's the most patient person in the universe, so it was really a no rush kind of deal. The yarn that I used was West Yorkshire Spinners Exquisite, which is a blend of Falkland wool, I believe, and silk. The colorway is 402 Wisteria, and I used a total of 227 grams. Yeah, so let me look at my notes here to keep me focused because I have so many negative things to say about the experience. I talked at length about how the yarn didn't agree with me. There were some breakage issues as I was winding the final skein. The cardigan had counting issues. I really was taking on something that I don't think my skills were ready for it yet. Am I grateful that I finished it? Absolutely. Does my best friend love it? Yes. So we're focusing on all these lovely lessons learned. However, it was a bit of a trek to get through it. I mean, purling for 400 plus stitches is tiresome, to be the nicest that I can possibly be. And that's not something on the designer. Obviously, that's just something that I would know now. if I were to look at a simple appearing stockinette cardigan that is knit bottom up and flat, oh, flashbacks. I said I wasn't going to get too much into the negative, right? New to me skills that I picked up from this, of course, the crafting of a cardigan, so I understand better the overall structure of a cardigan. Originally, when I started this, I did it with 2 at a time sleeves. So I tried really hard to do 2 sleeves at a time on the same magic loop cord. Didn't work out. We're not going back there. I also learned the structure of doing bottom up with joining sleeves after sleeves have already been done. This wasn't my first time doing buttonholes, but I think it is my first time doing buttonholes and knitting because I did do a baby onesie the previous year, which is the thing that kind of sent me on my hiatus. There were 16 buttons to be placed on this cardigan, and I thought I was losing my mind because when I finished all 16 cardigans placed at the distance intervals as prescribed in the pattern to the best of my ability, some of them are off probably by, a millimeter or something. I couldn't understand why the buttons didn't reach all the way up through the collar when I was finished with the 16. And I counted again because goodness knows I have issues with counting. And then I looked at the pictures of the sample that Andrea Mowry is wearing. There are 18 buttons on that sample. I was not hallucinating. I double and triple checked. She had 18 buttons. I searched through the document for the number 18, the number 16, the words buttons. I don't know if that's just something that I missed somewhere. At that point, I was really running out of steam on this and decided that, you know what, this thing was going to stay with its 16 buttons and no buttons on the collar. And I double checked with my best friend and she was more than happy with that. She had no intention of buttoning it up all the way anyway. At the end of the day, I'm so glad this cardigan is off my needles. It's done. It's been gifted to my best friend. She adores it. She thinks it's so soft and cozy and comfy. She had an active part in selecting the buttons. Unfortunately, I didn't write the button Etsy seller in my notes. However, they are in the project page on Ravelry. So if you're interested in those beautiful dark blue floral wooden buttons, go ahead and check out the Ravelry project page. And yeah, I'm just so glad that it's done. And moreover, I'm glad that my best friend loves it. The next thing that I finished is another gift. And this one would be for my husband. And this is related back to my Halloween seasonal kick. It's just that I ran out of time for all of the projects to be done. Again, I wasn't checking my regular completion times for socks, which was at least 2 weeks for a set. And I just jumped into the deep end with starting 2 pairs of socks plus a sweater, all to be completed by Halloween. Not realistic, but on the bright side, my husband is a gracious gift recipient. And he was like, if you don't think I'm going to wear them, regardless of the time of year. And sure enough, well into December, he continues to wear them, which is fantastic. What am I talking about? These are the Ghosts on the Run socks, designed by Jocelyn Fraser, also known as Fraser Knits. Again, I cast them on in October, intending them for Halloween, but I didn't finish them until maybe a week after. The yarn that I used was Cascade Heritage in the colorways 5618 Snow for a total of 27 grams and 5672 Black for a total of 54 grams. I had mentioned before, up until this point, the only neutral colored yarn in white or black that I had were the Guild of St. Cuthbert for white, and then this dark academia variegated colorway. This was a fresh acquisition to get these socks made. My husband selected them out of a collection of ghost themed or Halloween themed socks. He was tickled by how they kind of fly from left to right. They were really fun to make, and over time, I always needed the chart because of the short height of the ghosts. They swapped directions so frequently. I didn't want to get lost and start making the wrong direction of ghosts at a given time. Pattern goes out to an 8.5 inch circumference, and that is the finished sock circumference. And normally you want to wear socks with 1 to 1.5, or even up to 2 inches of negative ease. And my husband's foot circumference is like right on the border of that. I think it's like 9.5 inches circumference. However, he has a really high arch. He tends to want to err on the side of caution and try for something with a wider fit. So I actually modified for a little bit more ease to be safe. I cast on 72 stitches and I increased to a certain stitch count to accommodate one of the charts in the pattern. And thankfully, I made it work for one of the charts where I didn't need to carry long floats or anything. So it was a pretty nice experience to make. All right, so the next item that I finished in November 2025, this is a pretty short one, but not in terms of the sock length or sock leg length. This is the second pair of Hermione's Everyday Socks. I randomly cast them on in August because my husband and I were heading out to a cafe to try a new thing where we knit in public. And I needed a project to work on, so I just cast on these socks, and they were essentially just ignored while I was working on everything else. But as languishing projects tend to do to me, I was getting bothered by their continued unfinished status. So I just wrapped those up really quick, as quick as I could. The yarn is the Royal Bee Yarn Company in the colorway Desert Jasper, and I used a total of 66.5. I don't know why I was so specific. I didn't round up, but 66.5 grams. So the Hermione's Everyday Socks only comes in one size. It's 64 stitches. It's supposed to fit a size women's medium. And because I wanted to experiment with my sock formula, I went ahead and tried to make it in 60 stitches. So it's a little bit smaller. I also did a German short row heel instead of the heel flap and gusset. As a result, with the two different modifications, I do think the sock is slightly too small for me. I think I could have stuck with the 64 stitches and done the German short row heel. So I probably should have just done one modification at a time, but it is what it is. The sock still fits. It's quite snug, but it's not like cutting off my blood circulation, so it's definitely wearable. My final finished project for my 2025 year in review, and quite possibly for my year overall, because I'll tell you, I haven't finished anything else since, is Choose Your Gnome Adventure, designed by Sarah Shira, also known as Imagined Landscapes. So Sarah Shira is known for developing all these amazing gnome patterns, and I'm sure she's not the only one who's designed gnomes, but I just know that she's done the gnomes of Grimblewald, and I wanted to know what the hype was. Also, this was at a time where my hands were hurting a lot from all this knitting and knocking out all these projects throughout the year. Now that I was basically done and very burned out with gift knitting and even knitting for myself, I just wanted something lightweight, maybe literally, and unserious to work on. And that is what led me to gnomes. I used a combination of leftover yarn. So this is actually, I want to say his name is Norbert or Nolan. Oh my goodness. She names all the gnomes in her patterns. So he's made with a combination of leftover yarn from everything else. So we've got Cascade Yarns cotton socks in that cherry colorway. The white yarn is also Cascade Yarns cotton socks in their white colorway. I think it's white or off-white. Ecru. Ecru is the colorway. That's right. The body of the gnome is Ba Yarn La Jolla in Green Come True, and that's from the herringbone socks that I finished earlier this year. The nose and the beard are done in bamboo pop sock solids in foam, and I think those are also in his hands. He's also stuffed with a bunch of leftover yarn scraps. So using her tips, I also ended up using some leftover gauge swatches to create kind of like this rolled up, more smooth texture. I wouldn't say it's the smoothest. You can see he's kind of lumpy. So yeah, I really enjoyed making this, surprisingly, because I thought I don't make a lot of stuffies. So these, I'm using him to point, but this is like a amigurumi, crochet amigurumi versions of my cats. And I haven't made a lot since. I've made like $1 or $2, but it's been more than a year since I've done anything that isn't exactly functional per se. One can argue gnomes have function. That's whatever his name is. I forgot his name. I'm so sorry. So that's a ton of fun, and that did bring me into the holiday spirit because I made a modification and gave him a pattern on his hat using a chart from the free pattern anthology by Tin Can Knits. So my husband was teasing me that I'm incapable of doing just plain stockinette. And sure enough, I eventually had to break the monotony and give him a seasonally appropriate design. I think it looks great though. So there you have it. There's everything that I made in 2025 from January through November. If you are still here with me, thank you so much for watching. We're going to get into some stats and some reflections. If you only cared about looking at all the projects, I totally understand, and I hope you have a wonderful day. If you want to stick with me and see some fun data nerd kind of things, then we are moving into that. It's not as in depth as a lot of people do. Like I tried to break down yardage in versus out in terms of acquisitions, and then that was bumming me out hard. So you know what? I was like, lightweight stats only. But yeah, so we're going to head right into the totals. I wanted to call this the Gram-ies because grams usage of grams yardage. Anyway, I am counting completed projects, the total estimated grams and or yardage in the entire project, even if I didn't actually cast them on in this year. If something is incomplete, it's still sitting and taking up a spot in the home that could be used for basically anything else, if at minimum to just not like be bothersome in my mind. So even if, like, let's say there's 100 grams that are actively in a project right now, to me that's not necessarily 100 grams out yet, because there's still the opportunity for the thing to be ripped out and started over. And maybe the same is true even after it's done if I'm unhappy with it. But anyway, so just letting you know that the grams and yardage out do include projects that were started prior to this year, but only as long as they were actually completed and marked done this year. So the total grams out this year is an estimated 4,121. So if a standard skein of yarn is approximately 100 grams, that would be 41, almost 41 and a half skeins of yarn out. The total yardage out is approximately 12,743, which equates to approximately 11,652 meters. Out of the 26 projects that I completed, 8 were gifted, 11 were pairs of socks, whether or not they were gifted, 6 were garments, 5 were accessories, and 4 were household items, whether that was a wall hanging, a blanket, washcloths, etc. Now we're getting into the awards portion of this video. I'm giving out 5 awards and 3 booby prizes to different projects that I completed this year. So the first award is the Technical Triumph. This is the award where I felt like I learned the most. And whether that's like actual quantity of techniques that I was learning, or just my understanding of how certain things work or general concepts. The winner of the Technical Triumph is Miscellaneous. I chose Miscellaneous because not only did I learn 3 pretty major techniques in tandem, lace, cables, and two-stranded colorwork, this garment also taught me the importance of positive ease and the fabric that I'm using, or the yarn that I'm using, and how it relates to the fabric it produces and the expected drape. It also gave me the confidence to make certain adjustments as I saw fit. Even though it doesn't fit perfectly, I am extremely proud of this, and I felt like this really granted me the self-confidence and maybe even the skill set to move forward through virtually the majority of the other projects that I finished this year. The next award is for the Heavyweight Champ. Simply put, this is the most yardage or grams completed in a single project for this year. You might be able to guess it if you saw the first part of this series, and the award would go to Multivalence. Multivalence has a whopping 926 grams in it. It is a crochet blanket, so it is a little bit unfair if I were to knit a blanket of roughly that size. It would take maybe half that amount. Per the pattern, it's approximately 6 feet in diameter. I haven't actually measured that out. I do know that my entire wingspan is not enough to hold it up, and that is enough for me. The next award is for the best fit. So this goes to the garment that I made for myself with the best fit. And the award goes to Soforin. I have actually said this multiple times that it's my best fitting garment. So not much else to add there. Even though there are little bits and pieces that could be adjusted, at present, it is the one that I reach for the most. And it is the one that I do think fits me the best. The next award is for Fancy Footwork. This goes to the pair of socks that are my favorite to wear. And the award goes to the Camellia socks. I alluded to this before, but these are the socks that I go to when I want to feel a little bit extra fancy. And they have encouraged me to make more lace socks because I do think they are so beautiful, despite my initial concerns that they might be uncomfortable. And that is not the case at all. The final award that I'm giving that isn't a booby prize is Miscellaneous Marvel. So this project wouldn't quite fit into the other categories, but it's something that I want to give a special shout out to for no other reason than I really like looking at it, or it's just something really neat that I wanted to highlight. And that would be the Springbound Mitts. I thought these mitts would be so difficult to do. They look so complicated and they paint such a beautiful picture. And while it did require quite a bit of concentration, and I made it harder on myself by doing ladder back to card, I love these mitts so much. I actually have them hanging on one of my pegboards, um, and because they're just really so nice to look at. And not only that, when I actually wear them and I'm walking around outside or I'm typing, sometimes I even get distracted because I'm like, oh my God, they're so pretty. That concludes the award section, and now we're going to go into 3 booby prizes. So these are essentially things that didn't quite go as planned, and I'm choosing to celebrate them anyway because why not? The first booby prize is the slow burn. This goes to the languishing whip that finally got finished. The award goes to none other than LYS, designed by Andrea Maury. Lovingly called the bane of my existence. Nothing else to say here. It took forever, and I'm so glad it's gone. Thank you for all the time that you spent on my needles, and be gone. Enjoy your new life. The next booby prize goes to the funniest fail because I must laugh or else I'll cry. And that goes to the summer secret top. Yeah, I tried this on recently after talking about it in this series, and it's actually so funny that the tugged portion of the tank top stiff peaks. Like if you're baking and you're making like a meringue or something, I think meringues go to stiff peaks. Anyways, it just reminds me of whipped egg whites and the way that they like stick out. Um, it could be fashion if the entire piece was like that. I've actually seen some crochet garments and I think knit garments too that kind of look like, for lack of better terms, like what's a spiky fruit, like an artichoke or something, where like they're on purpose, like made into a bunch of little tiny triangular prisms all around the body. It would look so cool if it was all of that, but it is mostly none of that. So thank you, Summer Secret Top, for that. Finally, the last booby prize that I'm giving, and the last prize award overall, is the one that got away. So this one requires a little bit of explanation, and this is a surprise project to share. This is the unfinished object, or UFO, that stayed a UFO all year long. I had mentioned before I had the intention to finish all of my languishing whips at the start of the year. That was my goal for 2025. And the best laid plans, as we know. I almost did it. I finished out of, I think I had somewhere in the ballpark of 7 to 12 languishing whips, because math is hard. And I got all of them done. except for one. So this is the lone survivor. And I am congratulating this piece for making it this far and also still not being in the forefront of my mind to be completed. And this is the Marrakech blanket designed by Liz Peltola. I picked it up from Crochet Magazine, the late autumn 2022 edition. So this is not a pattern that's available on Ravelry or online. And even when I try to Google it, I can't find it. It was from a magazine that I picked up on a whim when I was in Michael's one day. Actually, I picked it up from a Joann's because I bought the yarn as well. And in my lack of knowing how to calculate anything ever, I picked up maybe 2 balls or cakes of this Big Twist Hush yarn, which was a Joanne specific brand. Rest in peace, Joanne. And then I quickly realized that I would need like maybe 10 more cakes of this yarn. So I made an online order. And quite frankly, I don't even know if I have enough yarn to finish this blanket. It's about maybe 10 to 15% done. And despite how little it's actually finished, it is a hefty blanket. It already feels like a weighted blanket, the size that it is. When I pick it up, it's like a miniature arm workout. It is a crochet blanket. So, with that respect, it would perceivably go quickly. However, because of the weight of it and how I can only work on it during a limited time frame overall during the year, because I need to be in a cold environment to successfully work on it. And I need my hands and wrists to be at premium health status because of the sheer weight of having to turn this, and the movement that crochet requires is just, it's just a lot of twisting. So, I guess we'll revisit how this is going in 2026. So congrats, Marrakesh blanket. You are making quite a home in this storage ottoman. All right, we are almost there. Some reflections that I want to share with you all. What did I really learn or pick up that stood out to me in my 2025 year of crafting? Number one is that I'm a surprise sock knitter. I didn't think that I would be at a point where, for example, I was asking all my friends to measure their feet and let me know what the measurements are. So if I felt like making them socks one day, I would. So that was a big surprise to me because I was scrolling back through my pictures and I did end up taking a photo of one measurement, and I'm like, why is there a foot in my Google Photos? And I guess that's because I'm a sock knitter now. Is that a normal sock knitter thing? If you're a sock knitter, am I officially one of you, or have I gone a little bit beyond and that's not it? Moving on before I rant too much about how feet terrify me, but how much I love socks. 2 more things that I picked up. In the world of crafting, sometimes there are just so many options, especially with things with patterns and instructions and inspiration boards and things like that. I do think that a lot of us run at risk of being overwhelmed with all the opportunities and what we want to do, what we're inspired to do, as opposed to what works for us and what is functional for our lives. Sometimes it's not about that because, again, it's a hobby. So why not make whatever we want? However, when it comes to garments or things that are going to spend a lot of time in my home, I have begun to start weeding out things that may not make sense for me. Number one, they don't bring me joy when I'm working on them. And number two, I may not actually enjoy the end product as much as I thought. So the two main things there is that I might not enjoy mystery make-alongs. And I don't want to say it as a permanent statement, like I will never do another mystery make-along ever again. I won't lie, I've been tempted. But for now, I'm focusing on things where I definitely know what I'm getting in the end, because there is such a wealth of patterns out there where I do want to make them and I know I want to make them. And at this point, after making multivalence, I love the end project, but there are things that I wish I chose differently had I known what I was going to get in the end. And that doesn't bother me to the point of wanting to rip it out. It's just like, I love it, but it could be so much better. The second thing that I might be moving away from is mohair. Functionally, I just don't think it's something that I really need or want to gravitate towards where I live. There are only certain instances where I can wear it, as much as I adore the chevron lace. And there is a sister pattern to this that doesn't involve mohair, to my knowledge. So I might be looking into that because I love the shape of the garment, just not the material that I chose to make it with. Next up, I really am starting to figure out the fit and fabric of wearables that I prefer, which kind of relates to the whole mohair thing. This is an ongoing learning process for me, especially considering how slow knitting and to some degree crochet is. So these lessons come seasonally, maybe. But the best tips that I've heard include looking at things that already exist in your closet that you regularly reach for, that are always in your laundry hamper because you wear them so much. For me, that's what's resulted in my assessment that I'm always in the market for tank tops and to some degree t-shirts. I don't own a lot of t-shirts right now. My wardrobe is 50-50 business casual and gym clothes. And I used to have a lot more t-shirts, but I wore them all to death. So that's something that I want to keep in mind. And I have realized that I actually own quite a few cardigans. So I think a cardigan is in the cards for me. Definitely not the LYS. Again, beautiful pattern, just not my style, and probably not with my trauma from the first one. So yeah, it's an ongoing process. I have a ton of things to say about it, but I'll probably save that for a future video. Another thing that I kind of honed down this year is my yarn choices and learning to manage my collection of yarn better. I like the term collection. Somebody brought up a good point once that a stash feels like it's something you should be ashamed of. I'm trying to be kinder to myself this year, and with respect to that, try not to be so self-critical when it comes to all the yarn that I purchased from years prior. So a lot of my projects were done this year out of yarn that I had purchased in 2023, which was like this year of unhinged yarn buying, um, and not being so rude to myself now, and looking back and saying, well, I really enjoyed the hobby and I was enjoying this wonderland of discovery. And maybe they don't all make sense together now, but they are finding a purpose. And moving forward, I am understanding that if I intend to make garments, and if the garments that I like to make are not necessarily multicolored and they're more solid colors throughout with a little bit of color work, then I need to start acquiring yarn when I allow myself to acquire yarn with the intention for that. So, in other words, learning what a sweater quantity means to me. I actually did a whole spreadsheet about this earlier this year, just for fun, because that's who I am. Um, and determining if I am going to make a yarn purchase, this is the quantity roughly that I would need to just about make um, this average amount of patterns that are in my radar. I give myself a grace period as well to assess whether I'm buying yarn just because I'm afraid of FOMO or if it's something that I really want or a fiber that I really appreciate. I have made enough items now where I'm starting to understand better the fibers that I like to work with versus wear, and maybe a little bit of both. And to help my yarn purchasing habits be a little bit more fruitful and organized, I made a Ravelry bundle for myself to mark things that aren't necessarily in my queue, but these are the projects or patterns that I would really like to make. And therefore, I would give myself a license to get a quantity of yarn for in case I am shopping for yarn and I don't want to run into the issue of I'm just going to buy one or two skeins and then figure it out from there. I want to minimize that because that is basically all I did in 2023, and as a result, it has been a little bit challenging to work out of yarn stash or collection. And so I'm looking forward to having a more cohesive collection of yarn moving forward. We're on to this last bit here, and these are my goals for 2026, or what I'm looking forward to in 2026 and beyond. There are some techniques that I would love to try, different shoulder constructions for garments. So I've heard saddle shoulders, set in shoulders. I don't know. I think all I've really done is raglan style, whether that's bottom up or top down. And I look forward to to seeing different details and different ways of constructing garments in the different patterns that I've acquired and intend to move forward with. I also want to try steeking. So there's a free pattern that I added to my queue already, and it's for steeking practice. So there is potentially steeking in my future. I had a failed attempt at cutting my knitting um, with the with the Nocturnal Jumper, but that hasn't deterred me. I really want to make it work, especially if I can do steeking with a cardigan. That would probably help with my gripe of doing a bottom up and attaching sleeves with cardigans. And I know that's probably not the only construction type. So yeah, I've been looking at a lot of cardigans. Let's just say that. In terms of gift knitting for 2026, because I kind of went wild with it this year, and I do think I ended up burning myself out a little bit. And now I realize that maybe the only garments that I should be making are ones where I can try on the garment regularly, and it's something a little bit more involved with the gift recipient. For example, my husband is a prime candidate to receive a garment gift because he's right there. We can do a fit check regularly to make sure it makes sense. I realize now there's a reason why a lot of gift knits are accessories, hats, mitts, gloves, even socks. I also really want to make sure that I start way in advance, and maybe this is a pattern for a lot of people. I don't want to do panic gift knitting, and that's something that I've really tried avoiding throughout this holiday season because I got burnt out of gift knitting before the holidays even began. That's been giving me a lot of FOMO that I can't join in on the spirit of gift giving. My hands are so tired, and I'm just burnt out. So I want to sprinkle gift knitting throughout 2026 if I do intend to do gift knitting. If I get that mojo back, then I would like to make sure that maybe I do a gift knit a month or something like that, and then have all that ready in time for the holiday season as opposed to trying to match this pace of this big rush. But we'll see how that goes. I don't have any concrete plans, so finally, some specific goals for 2026 besides finishing what's currently on my needles. I do want to return to making some more garments for myself, including a cardigan, as I mentioned. And there are some specific patterns that I have in my queue and I do have yarn for. And I'll talk about those in my regular podcast episodes moving forward. So there are some garments that I'm really excited about. I also want to make things for my cats. My cats love wool so much. They love it when it's blocking day for socks and things that we lay out on our little folding table, and they take long naps on our knitted items. And I know that the cats are knit worthy. I know that they'll destroy anything that I make them because they'll love it so much. I might try to make a sweater. I don't think they'll like sweaters, but I really want to try to make this one cat sweater that I've seen. And I do want to make them quite a few toys. They're turning 10 in February of 2026. So I think they would appreciate some recognition that they are deserving of gifts. My final goal for 2026 is to finish that Marrakesh blanket. No real explanation there. I just want to get it done. I do, despite me continuously forgetting that it exists because it's hidden in an ottoman. I would like to have it, and I know my husband would like to have it. He's been excited about that blanket since I cast it on. So wish me luck for that. We have made it. My 2025 year in review is complete. I will be resuming my regular podcast episodes from here. Whether you are a new viewer in just this video, or if you've been keeping up with me from the regular podcast and throughout this series, I appreciate you so much. Again, if I missed anything, or if you have any questions at all, or if you have any thoughts on anything that I made, feel free to leave a comment. I hope that your projects are going well. I wish you wonderful holidays. I hope it's cozy, lively, joyful, whatever you need at this time. And I hope that you're taking care of yourself. Remember to stretch and take breaks and hydrate. And I will see you soon. Take care.